And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over all the earth." And let them multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over every living thing that moveth upon the earth.
We know the sap which courses through the trees, as we know the blood that courses through our veins. The rocky crests, the juices in the meadow, the body heat of the pony and man all belong to the same family.
In the 1850s, the Suquamish chief Seattle was forced to transfer his tribal lands to the United States, his people confined to reservations.
Will you teach your children what we have taught our children? That the earth is our mother, and what befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth.
During the 20th century, biologists have peered deeply into the chemistry and physics of life, into existence at the molecular level. The Search for Life is a Smithsonian exhibition about the people and discoveries which have contributed to the rise of molecular biology. Like all explorers, the genetic explorer travels for us all, and what he or she discovers will affect us all. An enveloping multi-sided structure called the cell theater is designed to let the participants view life through the reverse end of a telescope until we are immersed in the microscopic genetic components of a single cell. As the science of molecular genetics develops, it permits us to reach inward into the intimate structure of DNA, to alter our environment, synthesize plants and animals, and perhaps even manipulate our own heredity. It's an awe-inspiring journey, as fraught with its own potential danger, benefit, and sheer exhilaration as travel in space. No previous generation has had greater influence over its biological destiny, nor greater responsibility for its own future. Most of us learn in science classes that genes have something to do with heredity. But talk to biologists for a definition of genes.
Genes are funny things. In a sense, I think a gene is the idea that we have that there has to be a little round ball, a material unit of heredity.
Genes are instructions for making parts of organisms. Specifically, and most commonly, they're instructions for making proteins.
And it's in the interaction of those proteins, they're turning on and they're turning off, their coordination, that you go from a single cell to an organism.
Proteins are all of what you are and do. They are the hair on your head, they are the substance of your face, they do the work that allows you to move and grow and do all of the other things that you do.
We and the chimpanzees, which are our closest primate relatives, share something on the order of 90 or 95% of our genes.
There is no profound difference between that human gene and the equivalent gene that there was in the animal.
Genes by themselves do nothing. They are nothing. It's genes inside of cells, inside of organisms, inside of their environments that do something.
So there's no question that genetic instructions are carried in the DNA. There's no question that at some level it is the stuff of life.
Genetic engineering, the direct introduction of foreign genes into an organism's genetic material by micromanipulation at the cell level. Transfer methods include gene cloning, employing a replicating infective agent, microinjection of DNA into cell nuclei, and direct uptake of DNA through the cell membrane.
Plant breeding and animal breeding is genetic engineering. We have been in the business, if you will, of genetic engineering for as long as we have been practicing agriculture, which, to the best of my knowledge, is probably at least 10,000 years.
All of our domestic animals and all of our foods were created by changing the structure of the organism around us by genetic manipulation.
What recombinant DNA techniques allow you to do is to do exactly the change, to make exactly the change that you want to make in an organism without doing damage to the rest of the organism.
Because this underlying process of breaking and joining DNA to put genes together in new combinations and to make new genes is the stuff that has driven evolution ever since the beginning of life on this planet.
The biological laboratories at Harvard University, established in 1931, have served as a training ground for over 2,000 scientists. Rob Dorrit, postdoctoral fellow, Cellular and Developmental Biology Department.
In the end of the 19th century, you sewed zippers and buttons onto clothing. You had people doing that 8 hours a day for minimal pay, and now you work with these little tiny tubes. And yeah, I mean, you've seen me here now for 2 hours, poring over these little tiny volumes, and I do this for hours on end. You endure it because you know that at the end of it, there might be some glimmering of an answer to a question whose answer you really do want to know.
For many of us, there's something very unsettling about scientists using a technology we find difficult to understand. Today, computers actually manufacture DNA.
We can make DNA that is compatible with almost any creature. There is no real mystery to the synthetic process. It's perfectly well understood.
Dipankar Sen, postdoctoral fellow.
In fact, we do make small pieces of human DNA on this machine. But of course, a human being has a very large amount of DNA. So to synthesize that totally would be a very daunting problem.
Chairman of this department at Harvard, trained in physics, math, chemistry, and biology, Nobel laureate Walter Gilbert is a molecular biologist whose experience spans the history of molecular genetics.
We have gone from a period in which one had only the vaguest ideas about what genes were and what one might have in terms of inheritance, to extraordinarily precise ideas in which we can know in detail what every gene is, what the product of that gene is, what it does.
Man has been trying to describe life from the first time anybody ever had thought. So, paint for me a picture of life if you had to describe life to somebody from another planet. It's a simple question.
Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory on Long Island, New York, is one of the foremost centers of biological research in the world.
That's locomotion and thinking.
In 1985, the DNA literacy program was established there.
That's a good one and a subtle one, where man is the manipulator.
Conceived and developed by David Miklos, the nationwide program teaches the tools and techniques of modern biotechnology.
The ultimate in uniqueness is the DNA molecule that is inside of the chromosomes that are inside of each of your cells, the nuclei.
These high school students are conducting an experiment called DNA restriction analysis, also known as DNA fingerprinting. Unheard of until 15 years ago, the procedure has become the workhorse of the genetic engineer, an essential part of the process used to isolate genes.
This really looks like a field that's got a future to it. Seems where it's going to be happening. All this would happen naturally anyway. We're just kind of speeding it up and manipulating it.
This is pretty exciting and stuff. It's dangerous. It should be controlled.
I'm afraid that power-hungry people are going to take advantage of the market and do God knows what.
I'll see this begin to look gray and cloudy.
You could go into selective breeding and saying, we'll only produce the perfect child.
I don't think it's right to actually predict and then select. You can't get into the business of playing God.
I don't want it to be used to create a perfect race or anything like that.
The DNA, stained and viewed with ultraviolet light, appears as fluorescent orange bands.
This pattern is so nice.
These high school students have just performed one of the procedures critical to all genetic manipulation,
50 billion molecules.
used every day, in every molecular biologist's laboratory, everywhere in the world.
A couple of master cloners in the making here.
For centuries, humankind has developed new technologies in an attempt to control the future and quell gnawing fears about the unknown, only to find these technological saviors giving rise to new terrors. Human myths have offered explanations for a world that seemed infinite and uncontrollable. An almost universal theme honors the human hero who makes a fearsome journey into the unknown to reveal his startling new powers. Perhaps these ancient myths foreshadow the molecular biologist, the new shaman of technology who journeys inward to cut the cosmic egg. For some, the genetic scientist seems bent on practicing his magic with the prerogatives of a divinity. He appears not as savior or hero so much as modern-day alchemist, playing not to transform lead into gold, but to transform the structure of life itself. Will he, however well-intentioned, inadvertently unleash some terrifying mutant genetic monster which could bring destruction to us all?
I understand where the fear comes from, and I think at some level it's a legitimate question to ask. After all, we have now the ability to, in a week of work, manipulate what took millions of generations and millions of years of evolution to create.
It comes from not understanding what genes are and not seeing the great pattern in all life, not seeing the relationships, the great sweep of the evolutionary force in life, essentially driven by the fecundity of life. And mankind's greatest problem is, in fact, always trying to keep ahead of the world around it. The particular way mankind has tried to adapt is by dominating the world. And if the species is going to survive as a species, then it's going to have to continue to try to dominate the world around it.
In the Joseph Hirshhorn Sculpture Garden, part of the Smithsonian, dozens of works of art reflect the audacious independence of a master collector. A spirit in full expression in the current exhibition of human images. A display which challenges us to draw our own conclusions about man, the creator. Man, who is uniquely endowed with the ability to give physical reality to his dreams. In the course of a few thousand years, the great manipulator has evolved technologies which today peer into the mysteries of life at the cellular level. As always, the use of new tools raises a fresh crop of ancient questions. Is our lust to explore the innermost workings of life simply man using cultural agendas to express his own fragile ego? Can we become the wise artists, sculptors of our destiny, making our own audaciously independent choices, choices that will ultimately benefit all life forms? Or could it be that the relentless quest to explore our diminishing garden, this small planet, is only preparation for a larger journey? Are we merely the clay of consciousness molded by the hands of some unseen sculptor divinity? Could we ourselves be the expression of that divinity, the future colonizers of other worlds?
Over the years that humans have manipulated life forms, whether it be crops or whether it be animals in the body.
Member of the Harvard faculty for almost 30 years, Everett Mendelsohn, historian of science.
There'd always been enough time to socialize the knowledge that you were gaining, so that over time you could think about what it was you were creating. And we turned out not to be really all that rapid in the past. It tended to take time. Mistakes were made. Nature took its toll in return. You couldn't really force it into the boxes you wanted to force it into all that easily or quickly.
What has changed for human beings as a result of technology is the scale of the manipulation. There's nothing new about the manipulation.
Author of several books on women's health issues, biologist Ruth Hubbard has conducted research and taught at Harvard University since 1950.
When manipulations become big enough, they are able to overwhelm.
The technology itself will tend to have a momentum. And that is, if you can develop the sense is, let's go ahead and develop it and worry about its consequences after we have its developed forms. Probably a mistake. Why? Because human societies are frail. Human societies are often selfish. Human societies often avoid the projection and of consequences of what they do, so that they live from day to day, an existential situation. With technology, that's lousy, because it can get you into terrible troubles. I mean, the marvelous image that Tom Lehrer gave us of the technologist. Remember Werner von Braun, once the rockets go up, I don't care where they come down, that's not my department, said Werner von Braun in that famous song. Well, to some extent, this has been the record of the technologist, the engineer. And then the society comes running by afterward, figuring out how we pick up the pieces.
I was training to become a flutist. And I went to study with the best flutist in the country at the time, William Kincaid. I realized that I didn't have what it takes. You have to be able to concentrate on the skills, the sheer physical skills that go into playing. My mind does its own thing. Doing science is like composing, and I think I have not the skills for being a composer. I have the skills for being a scientist and composing there.
Nina Fedorov is a staff scientist at the Carnegie Institution and a professor of biology at Johns Hopkins University.
The exciting part of science is when you suddenly see relationships emerging, that you understand something, how something works where nobody has ever understood it before. Immensely exciting to suddenly see into how something works in nature, which has its own rules.
In 1983, Barbara McClintock was awarded a Nobel Prize for work done almost 40 years earlier. Using only the tools of classical genetics, the young scientist had made the startling announcement that some genes could move from place to place among the chromosomes. Long regarded a maverick visionary, she has come to be universally acknowledged as one of the foremost geneticists of this century.
I had been asked to give a seminar at Cold Spring Harbor, where Barbara McClintock has spent many, many years. And she invited me to spend some time with her, and I was just extraordinarily impressed with the clarity of her vision.
Dr. Fedorov's research expands McClintock's original discovery, employing the techniques of recombinant DNA to follow the expression of the movable genetic element from generation to generation at the molecular level.
The patterns that you see on the kernels, the spotted patterns, are caused by a transposable element jumping out of a gene. What they can do for an organism is when change is needed, they are right there, allowing new combinations of genes to be constructed and tested in the environment.
For the past decade, Nina Fedorov has nurtured thousands of corn plants as part of her continuing maize genetics study. The months of June and July require constant vigilance. The time to pollinate is close at hand.
Boy, the wind really got these poor guys. The reason I'm trying to move so fast is because those that had bags on them that blew off in the storm will get contaminated by pollen that we don't want in them. This, by the way, is also the way that Barbara McClintock did all of her maize genetics, which is who I learned it from. Oh, God, look at that. I live in the lap of luxury. She did this many plants all by herself, and I have 4 helpers. And cover everything that blew off like last night.
Each ear is cut back, exposing the silks to assure uniform pollination. Pollen from the correctly numbered plant is dusted on, and the ear is protected with a carefully labeled paper bag.
What you see emerging here are anthers, basically a packet of pollen. These are the ones that are going to shed today. They look full and pregnant.
Every ear receives the pollen of only one other plant, carefully chosen and recorded by Fedorov.
You write T1 on
24, 38, 5. 2387. I'm going to give you one more. Okay, 24.
George, what number is on?
09. I think is what I'm looking for.
Move as fast as you can.
This is
Serious stuff.
So we could be here for months and months. But winter comes.
At the laboratory in Baltimore, the taxing routines of isolating and analyzing DNA continue, using modern molecular techniques to uncover information deeply concealed in the transposable element.
It's by understanding better and better how genes work that we have always effected improvements, whether it's in human health or animal health or plant health.
About 2 months after the grueling work of pollination comes the reward of the harvest. Each season, the field yields thousands of ears of corn to be stored for years of continued research into the mysteries surrounding the uniquely mobile transposable elements.
Human beings are not the only creatures that populate this planet, and indeed, we humans, I think, cannot survive without the other creatures on our planet, and we do very badly by them. Plants are rooted in one place. They must respond to the changes that go on around them of temperature and light and everything else in very different ways than creatures that can move. The mechanisms by which plants deal with the vicissitudes of the environment are altogether unique to them and incredibly interesting.
In 1988, in an address to the Smithsonian Resident Associates, Nina Fedorov moves beyond a technical presentation.
I conclude with John Hersey's novel, Blues. We human beings cannot exist alone. We cannot live without the support of these other living things. There are rules of mortality and survival which we dare not break, else all living things up and down the links of interdependence perish. And if that happens, links of life on Earth, the fragile chain, will part and will never be able to be mended. We'd better marvel while we can.
green prairie, planted 40 years ago by the ecological restorationist Henry Green on 40 acres of degraded Wisconsin farmland. It's part of the University of Wisconsin's Arboretum.
Frederick Turner, epic poet and philosopher, is author of the essay, A Field Guide to the Synthetic Landscape. It may seem contradictory to describe a prairie as synthetic, but for Turner, green prairie is a metaphor for man's involvement in his own destiny, a middle ground between the wilderness and the exploited landscape, a way of demonstrating that humans are natural and should play a role in evolution, in creation.
At first, it looks like a big, untidy field. Tall grass infested with weeds. But then, looking a little longer and a little more carefully, the mind reorders it. There's an unfamiliar, breathtaking, pale yellowish jade freshness in the green, and a preciseness, a laciness in the texture. Almost all the nutrients are in circulation in the living biomass. A prairie contains over 200 species of plants alone, not counting the bacteria, the mycorrhizal fungi in the root web, the insects, animals and birds. Creating the prairie, the volunteers and the ecologists who led them created nature, man-made nature, attempting to bridge the deep and damaging gap between nature and humanity. A prairie copies, recopies, reprints itself every spring, using seeds and shoots wherein are inscribed the instructions of the DNA code. When a plant reproduces itself sexually, the genes are chopped up and reshuffled to create true genetic individuals. Variation. Another element is required, and that is death. It may seem paradoxical to describe death, which is, after all, the opposite of survival, as a tool in the process of evolution, whose mainspring is survival. The richest mix of species occurs only on burnt prairies. Before the settlers came, a prairie fire could burn all the way from Illinois to the banks of the Wabash. The Wisconsin Arboretum burns its prairies irregularly as nature might. Burning showed that nature needed us, needed even those most Promethean and destructive elements of ourselves, symbolized by fire. Sex and death, two great forces at work.
Conception. Ovulation. Sperm rushing to join the waiting egg. Yet how did the union of this particular egg and sperm urge life forward to make this child and no other?
We look around and we see ourselves as complex organisms with brains, eyes, hands. And we know we started from the very simplest thing. A little bag in an egg, the nucleus that contains a set of DNA molecules, and a little wiggling sperm, which is essentially just a set of DNA molecules with a tail that drives it forward. And the two got together and used that information to make our cells, complex structures. And that's what we'd like to understand.
Entitled Generations, this Smithsonian exhibit is a celebration of heritage the world over. Filled with the implements and myths of fertility, the exhibit reminds us how much we share. The universal importance of birth, of family. It's about the aspiration each of us holds for the young, the ways of life we hope they will continue, and the very real conditions they will inherit. A child is proof of the future. evidence that it does not end with us. During the last decade, a new area has been welcomed in medicine: prenatal genetic screening and testing. Advances in reproductive technologies, such as in vitro fertilization, border on the miraculous, permitting some once infertile couples the opportunity to bear their own natural children. New genetic knowledge permits detection during pregnancy of some serious disorders such as Down syndrome, Tay-Sachs, and sickle cell anemia. Prenatal diagnostic technologies have rapidly been perfected. The procedures have become safer, less invasive, and accessible to more and more couples. Most often, results are reassuring. When a serious disorder is detected, parents face a choice: to continue the pregnancy or terminate and try for a normal child.
What are you living with as you choose to abort a fetus? Part of the difficulty is that although at one level prenatal screening says, well, we'll just give you the technical background and it's up to you to then decide what you want to do, it's not that simple. Why? Because we haven't built up those human factors which make the choice an easy and more realistic one. It's not quite the same as I'll buy that bicycle or that one, that automobile or that one. It turns out that you are dealing now with a human life.
Women and couples experience the termination of a pregnancy very differently if they want a child, if it is a wanted pregnancy, but they have to at a certain point, or they decide that they have to at a certain point terminate it because though they want a child, they don't want this one.
Some genes identify late onset disorders, genetic diseases which only become apparent later in life.
It seems to me that we're playing God by saying that a person's life is not worth living because we can predict in utero, before they're ever born, that they will die of a painful disease in their 40s or 50s.
20 years ago, prenatal testing was almost unknown. Today, results from amniocentesis are routinely given near the 20th week of pregnancy. Termination becomes a traumatic experience, both emotionally and physically. The newest genetic tests give results even earlier, before anyone necessarily knows about the pregnancy except mother and doctor. It can force parents to face choices which nature might well have made for them a few weeks later.
It is very likely that before too long, it'll be possible to do prenatal diagnosis by getting fetal cells out of maternal blood through recombinant DNA technology. That will be much less invasive as far as the pregnant woman is concerned. It will therefore be much easier for the physicians to just plain do it. A woman won't even have the chance, in a sense, to consent or refuse consent. There are some people who feel that it is better to know than not to know, and that it's worth any price. I'm not at all sure, certainly not in this area, where knowledge confers this enormous responsibility on parents and especially on mothers. If we know that a fetus has a certain disability and we decide to go ahead with the pregnancy, will that child then be able to blame a mother for having wrongfully given this child life because she should have known and done something else?
It turns out that sometimes you may have information you don't know how to use. You don't want it yet because you don't know how to make appropriate choices. We have certain norms as to what is an acceptable form of human being. Are those the only norms that one could have? Could you broaden them and, let's say, accept people at the margins? After all, we now build, for example, we build ramps into almost all public buildings by law. Why? Because it turns out that we now feel that people who have certain physical incapabilities are human beings who we want to value.
Eugenics movement in this country.
Daniel Kevles, historian of science, California Institute of Technology, author of In the Name of Eugenics.
Eugenics is a word that was coined in the later 19th century by Francis Galton. Galton was a scientist who happened to be a cousin of Charles Darwin. He took the word from a Greek root meaning good in birth or noble in heredity. He was impressed by the fact that animal breeders and flower fanciers could, by selective breeding, improve their stocks. And so he had the idea, why can't we take charge of our own evolution? Why can't we breed better people than we now have?
Eugenics is race betterment. Eugenic measures are measures that are supposed to weed out the unfit.
Different societies or cultures always valued certain characteristics of human beings, whether it be hair color or eye color, whether it be the shape of nose, whether it be the nature of the face, whether it be the physique. And we have tended to favor in our schooling, in the rewards we gave, and even in the crossbreeding we did, the marriages, often arranged. We favored certain characteristics rather than others. So from that point of view, we'd always directed human heredity. Now, mind you, human societies, our own included, did indeed take a weak genetics and enact social legislation which thought reflected that weak genetics. For example, some 30 states in the Union passed laws mandating sterilization in a whole series of cases of people who we thought would be genetically deleterious were they allowed to procreate.
The early eugenicists said, basically, that thou shalt not have the right to reproduce if we decide that you are somehow biologically inadequate. A number of biologists, geneticists, social scientists thought they should employ certain measures to accomplish this end. The sterilization of the biologically unfit, the restriction of immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe, because they thought that people who came from those parts of the world were, first of all, racially different, and secondly, racially inferior.
The eugenics of the 1920s used to exclude crossbreeding across races. You had a long list of negative characteristics. Jews were way down on the list of those who were seen to have favorable genetic characteristics. So that our history tells us to be careful, that scientists really thought they were onto something in the 20s and 30s. They really got behind a movement for eugenics. Not all scientists, some opposed it, but ones whose names were among the makers of modern genetics.
As the technical procedures of prenatal diagnosis become safer and more effective, the knowledge advances, gene by gene, linking more disorders and traits.
It will be possible to type an individual and say, you have a 50% chance of having schizophrenia. You have a certain chance of having cancer. You have a whole variety of possible diseases. And society will have to come to grips with that knowledge.
This does open up the very real image of a brave new world in which you'll be able to remap or reshape, in thought at least, to begin with, and ultimately in practice, to reshape a genetic makeup of human beings. And believe me, as I look about at the societies which we live in, none of us are ready to manage that choice.
Parents want to have a child.
Sheldon Krimsky, professor at Tufts University, a founder of the Committee for Responsible Genetics.
They go to a genetics clinic and they're told that certain genes would be advantageous to their child, certain sequences. Perhaps those sequences could be added to the sperm.
Now that we have a capability to more finely choose those things we want, how will we use that choice?
One case we have, let's say, a life-threatening disease. The next case, asthma.
Do you want to say that you want to breed for a human race which has superintelligence at all levels? What's lost when you do that? Do you lose your performers or your artists? Do you lose your athletes?
Do we leave this to the discretion of individuals and people who are commercially benefiting from it? Or do we pass straightforward policies? Right now, there's no law against a private company selling sperm, modifying the sperm, and utilizing it in reproduction.
I don't believe that any scientist should ever be allowed total freedom of operation in areas where consequences may affect human populations. I don't think they want that full responsibility. They're not social prophets, nor are they trained for it. Most of our scientists are babes when it comes to significant ethical thinking.
Southern Texas is home for a company called Granada, which operates ranches throughout the United States. Granada's home territory sprawls from Houston to the Texas Panhandle, 25,000 acres of prime Texas ranch land. Founded in 1972, Granada produces over 750 million pounds of beef every year and has already won a preeminent place among the world leaders in livestock reproductive technologies. At Granada's sire services, visiting prize bulls, some valued at more than $1 million, await a place in line for semen collection. "40 miles away, embryos are harvested from superovulated cows. Dr. Kirk Gray directs the embryo transfer operations and coordinates research activities at Granada Genetics.
Our expectations are 7 to 8 viable embryos every time we collect a cow. We collect 7-day-old embryos because the 7-day-old embryo is at the best age to micromanipulate. The whole intent of commercial embryo transfer is to increase the number of offspring from genetically superior cattle.
Half the fertilized eggs are frozen in liquid nitrogen for later implantation into surrogate mothers, at Granada or anywhere in the world. The remaining half are implanted directly into recipient cows, surrogate mothers often of an entirely different breed. At Granada, Brangus calves bred for beef are carried and raised by Holstein dairy cows. Such reproductive technologies are not uncommon in the livestock industry. But Granada is a pioneer in putting to practical use one of the most powerful new biological techniques, embryonic cloning.
History is in the making here. These calves are identical because they're clones.
Dr. Jim Blunser, head of Granada Land and Cattle, a specialist in bovine breeding.
Through cloning, you could produce, theoretically, mass numbers of identical copies.
The embryonic cloning procedure requires a delicate balance of conditions directed by skilled technicians. A 32-cell embryo of desirable parentage is harvested from the donor cow. The embryo wall is carefully severed using microsurgical tools. This allows the suctioning of each cell's nucleus containing the genetic information. Unfertilized eggs with all genetic material removed await receipt of the genetic instructions. When the nucleus is inserted, the embryonic clone is created.
The implications for humans is a question that people are surely going to ask. You can't avoid asking. In fact, you should be asking it now and not later. By and large, we'd have to say most people won't want to see that misused, will they? But after all, within my lifetime, there was an Adolf Hitler who took a society which was not a marginal society, not a society of barbarians, not a society of so-called savages who hadn't high education, who hadn't gone through moral training, who hadn't a deep philosophical basis, who didn't have a full educational system. Not at all. I mean, when one looks back at the example of Germany of the 1930s, you have a civilization as high as any have gotten in our own times, who thoroughly misused the knowledge they were gaining.
A number of the evils that society could do with the technology, it could do anyway. Because the evils that it might do with the technology are the evils of racism. They're the evils of, let's say, controlled breeding, for size, which you could do perfectly well without any fancy technology if you wish to do it.
One can do hugely destructive science at all kinds of levels. And the Nazis didn't have recombinant DNA, they just killed people.
Most scientists, myself included, generally do science because we think that knowledge is on the whole beneficial. But the greater the knowledge we have, the more use and the more useful things we can do with that knowledge.
Should you do every kind of scientific experiment you want to? The answer is flatly no. You and I have learned through history that information which could be gained in unethical manner, let's say by Nazi scientists during the Second World War experimenting on human subjects in inhuman ways, was not knowledge we wanted to have. There are some forbidden forms of experimentation. We've muddled through the centuries to the present, and we're still here, even though we've had chances to do ourselves in on a number of occasions. It isn't that we haven't tried to do ourselves in, and we still stand within a small inch of doing it with the nuclear weapons we have at hand. I mean, human beings, it turns out, seem to move right to the edge of disaster and then hang there for a while. A misstep, a miscalculation could be disastrous. All the wisdom we've had hasn't kept us from putting in place the technology to make the disaster.
While the terrors of specific catastrophes make psychological headlines, a subtler, slow-moving cataclysm to the biosphere may be overlooked.
What we must do, we scientists as well as everyone else, is invent an ethic that includes not just human societies, but the entire biosphere and geosphere, if we're going to survive. We're not looking at things that will become irreversible in a century. We're at the edge now. The extinction rates of organisms worldwide are higher now because of man's activities than they have been except at the most massive extinctions in the history of life on Earth. You don't reinvent those organisms. Those organisms, when they go extinct, are gone for good. It takes millions of years to restore the diversity that we now have. I am discouraged in the end by how slowly people become aware of what they are doing. To become aware and then to act on it as governments, as worldwide societies of human beings, is a very complicated business. We are used to existing almost as tribes. We still are at a level where nationalistic concerns are much more important than the fate of the environment throughout the world. To get from here to where we must evolve ethically as human societies will take longer, I think, than we have.
In many of the world's great religions, there's a curious name for the divinity, which is the Son of Man, or the child of humanity. Supposing we took that literally, supposing in some sense the divinity were our descendant, were what we collectively came onto the earth to bring about. Maybe the species as a whole, maybe all of us have a child that we must not abort. And maybe our genetic technology is going to be part of that.
We are the best adapted things at the moment, but that doesn't mean that something will not come along in the evolutionary time future that will be better adapted than we are. Or that our offspring, in fact, will adapt better to the world that we create then we are adapted to the world that we live in.
We are, after all, what nature came up with, given the longest period of evolution, the richest conditions. If you want to find out what nature is like, look at human beings. We're natural. We can, in fact, make natural things. We're going to be meddling. We're going to be trying to find out. We're going to be changing things. We might as well be doing good things.
And so the question is, well, where is modern biology going to go? What are we finally going to know? And how is that going to impact mankind? Some of the things that we will know over this next period, I think, will be things like the ability to grow arms and legs, regrow parts of the body, ideally to heal the broken back or broken spine. The technology is the basis of our advances in medicine. If we are going to have a treatment for the AIDS virus, that treatment is going to come out of the recombinant DNA technology. So the technology has now moved in the last 10 years from the laboratory curiosity to the place where one likes to see an applied technology really making a difference in the world.
Biology, I think, is the key to the future. Our greatest challenge is to understand the biology better and to use biology, because that's the only way that we will create a system which is sustainable, in which we are doing more than simply buying time.
The world is a very big place. There are lots of organisms. They live interesting lives. They have all kinds of habits that we don't know anything about. They have all kinds of functions that we don't understand well. Biology is full of exciting and interesting problems.
It turns out that if you want to, you can turn a desert into a prairie. You can turn a wasteland into a productive area. You can find new uses for older materials. You can recycle materials which in the past you thought were wasteful. It turns out, of course, that there are some areas of science and technique which can be very beneficial to human ends.
I don't want us to foreclose on this strange divine drama of the universe. I see this prairie as an example of something natural which is created by human beings, and instead of the process being jinxed by that ambition, it was triumphantly realized. It can happen.
In his epic poem Genesis, Turner presents the idea that earthly biological organisms could be altered through bioengineering to create an ecosystem which could support the human race on another planet.
This garden, let it propagate itself, sustain itself. An arch economy dynamically balanced by the pull of matched antagonists, controlled and led by a fine dance of feedbacks, asymptotic, cyclical, damping, even catastrophic. Let the new species bud and multiply. Let monsters speciate and radiate and seize the niches that themselves create. Let some be smothered or extinguished, some effete, exquisite, cling to some microclimate or kind veil, eking survival for a clutch of genes. Each of these gardens now awaits its story. Its genius Loki clasps its fetal hands. Since all material is but arrangement, each new arrangement's new material.
Will you teach your children what we have taught our children? That the earth is our mother. Man belongs to the earth. All things are connected, like the blood which unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself.